Hi, welcome back to Country Basket Weaving. I'm your hostess, Sandy Atkinson. Today we're going to be working on our treasure bowl. It's worked on a mold. We're going to be talking about that. Before we get into the cut material for that pattern, though, I want to tell you about the wax linen thread. I use it in this pattern here. It comes in a lot of different beautiful colors. It comes 7-ply, which is your larger one. It also comes 4-ply, which is the one we'll be using today. Also, Kathy Halter from Ohio sent me these beautiful pieces, these little miniature basket necklaces woven on while she traveled, she said, or it's easy to work with this. These have got beads in it. They're worked with the wax linen thread. Also, on the top of this gourd that she's hollowed out, she has done a lot of bead work using the wax linen thread, some pine needles, and she's put on some embellishments and beads. A lot of ideas. I just want to share these ideas with you. I'm sure that somewhere along the line you can use them. Let me set these off. We're going to be working on a mold again today, like I said. This one I have almost ready to go. What I've done is already inserted the pieces and I've cut them. And I will stop right now and give you the cut and material pattern. It's as follows. You're going to need one 8 or 10-inch mold, one wood base, 1/2-inch flat oval, cut 29 pieces at 7 inches long. You're also going to need some medium cane, and then you're going to need a lot of different wild and natural materials, and these are things that you can choose from. I have some ideas here. I have taken walks with my kids and picked up pine cones and picked up different things, some birch bark, and I've used those. And shopping trips, I've picked up some little embellishments here. These are little brass hearts. Seashells work really nice. You'll probably have to do a little hole in these with a real sturdy drill bit. But just all kinds of ideas. Feathers, but we'll get into that a little bit later as we go along. You need to cut your pieces. I've already cut this one 7 inches. We're going to come in here, and I'm going to taper this down about 1.5 inches up from the end. I'd like to try to make a smooth transition here. This is going to be tapered about half the width of the original. After I get it tapered, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to sand it. I'm just using a sanding pad here, trying to get that real smooth so it makes a smooth transition from one size to the other. Go ahead and sand the rest of it too. Then go ahead and put it to soak. I've already done that with this piece. I'm going to put a bend on it so it'll start forming the shape of the mold. We start out with a mold on this pattern, but we're going to do something a little different. And go ahead and slip it under the rubber band. I let them dry, all night sometimes, or for a few hours anyway, so they'll kind of take the shape of the mold. And of course I've already added my wood base up here, added it with this one has a wing nut, some of them have just screws. Starting out with your caning, take a length of caning, find a spot in here. I need to mention, make sure you have an odd number of spokes on here because we're going to do some continuous weave. I'm going to slide this piece in here. That's my caning. I'm putting it face down, doing a miter and coming across a spoke here. Then I'm going to weave under the next spoke. I want this row packed in really tight. If they fall out, just have patience with them and put them back in. For the first row, I'm going to try to leave my rubber band on. On some patterns, such as the Nantucket we did, of course the rubber band stayed on a lot of the time. But this one I want more bowl shape, so we're going to take that rubber band off completely. I'm packing everything in tight. So far, so good. Nothing's fallen out. Like I said, if it falls out, just be patient with it and put it back in. Try to keep your spacing even between each one of the spokes. When you get back to where you started, just make sure everything's packed in tight. You'll be able to continue on weaving because of that odd number of spokes. Now I'm right where I started, so I'm going to be under the spoke I started on instead of over. And now I'm on an opposite weave. Work that second row, packing it in tight. And by now we can go ahead and take the rest of our spokes off the mold, because I want the base of this basket worked on a mold, but the sides I want kind of free form. So I want it to be more of a bowl shape. That's the one I just put in. It's still kind of wet. It's going to be a little bit harder to shape. The other ones I've shaped all night. But go ahead and pack them in tight and weave down about 1.5 to 2 inches, however big you want that base to be. I've already got that part started on our next setup here. I'm going to take the rubber band off. These molds were made by a friend of mine, and they're a little bit crude. There's nicer molds on the market, but there are a lot of different things you can use for a mold. Okay, I have that done. Now I'm going to do something a little different on this basket. I'm going to go ahead and start another piece, and I'm going to create a hill with my caning. Now on my sample basket here, I used some blue, and I did this to kind of represent water. Maybe this was a basket that I was picked up things from the seashore or whatever, but this blue represents water. We're going to go ahead and use the caning here to give it a little bit different look. I'm going to weave over about 5 or 6 spokes. Then I'm going to turn. Now because I want my caning up again, I want the shiny side up, I'm going to do a little twist right there at my turn. So my shiny side is up, and I'm going to weave back. Oh, let's weave back about 7. Let's go 8. And then we're going to turn, make that twist again so that my shiny side's out. This time I'm going to short myself 1. Where I did the first turn, I'm going to turn 1 before it because I want to decrease, which will increase, make that turn so that my right side comes up. Because I'm building a hill, so I'm decreasing by 1 each time and building this hill. And then in between the hills I will have the valleys, decrease by 1 more. Turn that cane, work it up. There are just so many ideas for this, and I call it my treasure basket because of the different things I put in it, things that mean something to me that would mean absolutely nothing to anybody else. Okay, I'm back up here, and I've created this little hill. Excuse me, I'm going to cut this off and just tuck that in there behind. Now I have to think, what is it I want to do here? Let's put in some roving. I have this really bright orange roving. I'm going to start it on the opposite side from my hill. Sometimes I like to take and put a knot in it, have it end with a knot or start with a knot. Very carefully, roving pulls apart. I've also used some real pretty yarns in this type of a basket. Pulled apart again, so I'm just going to start that end again. And I'm going to build another hill with this one, so I'm going to turn, come back and weave back. Build up this hill. And I try to use the rest of my roving, so I'm just going to, I've only got a little bit of tail left here. I'm going to work it back and forth and pack it in tight. Go ahead and leave that little tail out. Maybe we can think of something to hang on it. Okay, seagrass works really well to add into this basket too. I didn't add it into my sample, but let's go ahead and add a little bit in here. As you can see, we're creating these hills in here, and we've got these valleys to fill in. So maybe we can come back with some seagrass and fill in a valley here in between my hills. I don't really want too much seagrass, so let's just make it something real small here. I'd rather go and put in some more of my naturals. Pack it in tight. Well, that's probably enough right there. So let's cut an end and let's stick that end inside. Once I start putting things around in here, I need to kind of gather it and give it some structure, some stability here. So I'm going to do some triple twine. Besides, I want to get into my twining so I can show you how to tie twine. Tie twining is really pretty, and it's how you can tie things while you're twining onto your basket. Well, this one's really tangled. Let's try another one. Here we go. I need 3 different lengths because I'm going to triple twine on this one. So I'm going to start anywhere in here, 3 consecutive holes, and I'm going to have to tip my mold towards me so I can work and see what I'm doing. And now I'm just going to triple twine these on, taking my farthest piece to the left. I'm going to go over 2 and behind the 3rd. Over 2, my farthest piece, and behind the 3rd spoke. It'll always be the next spoke. You really don't have to go back and count them. It's just the next spoke in line that you haven't been behind. I'm going to go ahead and do a whole row with this. Then I'm going to come in here and build up some more. Now, notice I have left my rubber bands off because I don't want this at this point to take the shape of the mold anymore. I want it to be a bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it off. Leave it off the rubber band. Straighten these ends out. They're going to get tangled as we weave. I have to go up, around, follow my yarn up here where I put that in. It's hard to see where I'm going. Let me tip the mold. Careful you don't catch that yarn in. This will help pack everything in tight too and keep it all tight. You're going to get some gaps in this basket. You just really can't avoid them. But if we can, we're going to still try to keep things packed as tight as we can. Okay, I'm back to where I started. So I think in this area here, what I want to do is build another hill. I'm in a valley, so I'm going to come and weave over just a little bit farther. Then I'm going to take my piece, my first one on the right, and I'm going to go behind. You may have to crimp this, remember, we don't want that to break. Taking my next piece, which is on the right now, and then taking my 3rd piece. So now I'm reversing my weave and I'm going backwards. And now I'm working from right to left. Let's do just a few. I'll do one more. Then come in here and we're going to reverse it again and do the same thing. Taking my farthest one on my left this time, bringing it over 2 and around. Okay, one more, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm building up this area. This time I'm on the right. I might want to take an embellishment and put on this. Okay, now I'm back to where I started. I'm going to bring these over, and I'm taking the farthest one on my left. Let's take and let's put in one of these little brass. Nope, it's going to be tight. You can use any size reed on this. I happen to have number 3 I'm working with right now. Number 2 works really good. And this number 3 is a little bit tight, but it's going to work. And I'm going to go ahead and put on an embellishment. This case, it's a little brass heart. Okay, at this row, I could go ahead and take this row all the way around again, just to add some more height to it all the way around. And keep working in different patterns. I'm going to go ahead and leave these ends on because I may want to pick them up later. There's just really no pattern that we're working. It's just whatever happens to come to mind. And I'm going to come and I'm going to get some different material. Here I have philodendron sheaf, and I know you've seen me work with these before. I really like these. And let's put that right here in this valley. And I'm going to show you how to tie twine this on. We're going to take, we have our 3 lengths down here. We're going to take the one to the left and go over the sheaf. First I have to straighten out my ends. Okay. Go over the sheaf, and it would be around the spoke that it's supposed to go around, so it'd be 2 over. Bring it behind and down. Pick up the next one and bring that one, still following the pattern, bring that behind and down. So you're really going over this sheaf. And that's what's tie twining that on. And I use this a lot when I do these natural baskets like this. It's just really fun. It looks very pretty. It shows the work underneath. Kind of pull everything tight. Remember, you're coming from behind the piece. Let's say I wanted to add something else with this now. Let's come up here and get some of my palm inflorescence, and let's add some of these on. I want to put some of these in the basket because I want to be sure, and I'm going to be adding these onto the top of the basket for the rim, so it's nice to involve it into the basket. Another thing I like to use is my corn husk. I have some dyed ones. This one happens to be natural. I'm just going to rip these apart, and I'm going to add them in here. Now I can either add one like this, add another one, and then I can twine them together on the ends. I could do this with triple twine and add 3 of them. I could take one and just weave one all the way in by itself, like so. I also like to add some colors, so I may go and get another color and add that in. Another thing I like to add into these baskets is, there's pine needle. That's very pretty. You can weave some pine needles in. I did some pine needles on my sample basket because I did the rim in pine needles. There's just no end. Well, the whole idea is to build these hills and valleys and work the hills and valleys. When you get that done, the top does not have to be even. As you can see here, my top isn't even. This one's ready to come off the mold. This one has a screw on it, so we're just going to unscrew it. Take it off the mold. Now what I've done here is put a couple of rows. I've got 3 rows and then a couple more rows at the top of the twining, because remember, the twining helps hold it all together. I've put in different items here. Here I've got some birch bark that I found on a trip with my kids in the woods. I've added some little ceramic hearts, just a lot of different ideas. Make sure that you're going to leave, at least 1.5 inches on the top of the mold, because we need to cut and tuck these. You're going to need to wet this, make sure they're wet, and give it a bend, and when it bends, it's going to break and crack, and we're going to come in here and we're going to take off. It's like peeling it off here, trying to get it thinner. And we can come down here and we can do a little bit of trimming on the sides to help that slide in there also. And take a tool, come down and about your last couple of rows of twining, and slide that piece down in there. Like so. Okay. Now, all this is going to be covered because we're going to put a rim on it. And for my rim, I've chosen to use some of the palm inflorescence, and I'm going to take a few of them. Different lengths is fine. And I like to have most of my butts up here. Remember, these are the butts and these are the tips down here. I'm going to need a few more. Then I'm going to use the wax linen thread also. Let me lay these down here while I get my wax linen thread ready. I'm going to come in here, and I prefer using a needle. Now the wax linen thread is stiff enough to go ahead and push through. I've just always used a needle, and it's something that I do. If you want to use just the thread by itself and push it through, it's stiff enough where you could do that. Okay, going from the outside to the inside, we're going to do a blanket stitch, kind of borrowed from the embroidery field. And I've made a knot on the end. I'm taking my end of my needle and putting it through the knot, and I'm drawing it up tight. Make it tight there. Go ahead and lay the needle down for a minute. Put on your border. Lay these pieces on top. They're going to kind of roll from the outside to the top to the inside, and they're going to be hiding all of this top work that we did. Coming from the outside, come around, go around a couple rows of your twining. Should be consistent and go in the same row. Whoops, it kind of happened automatically, but you're going to bring this needle up through, and then you're going to tighten it down. I'm going to do that a couple more times. I'm kind of holding my thread on the other side, come around to the front, come into the same row, and bring that needle. Now see, I have this thread going around here, so when I reach in for my needle, I'm automatically inside of that loop. Then I'm going to pull all this tight, and that makes that blanket stitch. And that holds all this on. I need to adjust it a little bit, give it some length and pull. Now as I work this basket around, I'm going to have to, of course, keep adding more of the palm inflorescence as I work. Pull it tight, it's not going to break, it's really sturdy. Come in here and I'm going to get some more palm. Different lengths. And again, I have my butt tips, or my butts up here, and I'm going to lay this down here along with the tips of the ends of my first section, and I'm going to start adding these, and this will keep taking my length on. Come in here, we're going to make sure you go between each one of the spokes and pull this tight again. And you keep working the base like that. Let me do a couple more for you. Now my thread here is not very long, so I'm going to probably have to end this piece, and I just simply tie it off, loop it around a couple of times and tie it off. But you see that blanket stitch inside here? It's really a pretty stitch too, so it just falls right in place with the basket. Some other things that I could have added to this basket and I didn't is my raffia here. I have some natural and I have some dyed blue raffia. I could have worked that in. There's just no end to the ideas of making your own treasure bowl. I'm going to pull this tight. I have enough length on here to do one more. I also need to go in and get a few more pieces and add to it. But you can see how this is kind of forming. When I come back and work around here, I'm going to work my ends, my tips, into this one and bring these up, lay them on top so that it's one nice flow between the two, and you can't really see where I've started and I've stopped. Let me get a few more so I can add a little bit more to this. These really should soak. Overnight is good too. They really need to soak for a few hours or overnight because they're really stiff. And when they're soaked, they become very pliable to work with. Okay, here I'm adding on some new ones. Here's a new group. Again with my butts up here. And I'm going to lay them on top. And they will join with the other tails or my other tips. And I'm going to go ahead and do another stitch over here. I kind of got to keep my hand there. Can't show you what I'm doing. It's kind of there to hold everything together for me. And I'm going to pull that through. Remember, I'm going through my yarn to create that blanket stitch. Now, I haven't enough length here, so I'm just going to tighten this. I'm losing my palm here. I'm going to tighten this, and to end it, I'm going to come in here and just loop it around a couple of times, keeping everything pulled tight. Do a couple of stitches through it, through just the yarn, and then I'm going to have to end this one, get a new piece, and start another piece. And of course I would start it the very same way that I did before. Go ahead and finish adding the rest of your palm inflorescence up here and working it around with a blanket stitch and ending it. And remember to catch in these tails or these butts over here that we left and catch in the new tails and in the basket. That's what I did on this one. You can't see really where I started and stopped, but here's the butt sticking up and the tails are worked in. Next week we're going to be working on our Ona basket. Has a really unique upside down weave. Kind of fun to do. A lot of new ideas on this one. It's woven on a base. I want to thank you for all the letters that I've been receiving. They're fun to get. Lots of tips on them, lots of ideas, and I'd like to share those with you maybe in a later broadcast. I guess we'll look forward to seeing you next week and have fun and enjoy your treasure basket. And remember to collect things as you're out walking or as you're shopping. Collect things and ideas to put into your basket. We'll see you next week.